When they underestimated me, that was their last mistake. It started on a Tuesday evening in our Austin home. Tuesdays were sacred in our 7-year marriage. The one night Victoria and I would cook together, sit at our oak dining table, and pretend we were still the same people who'd fallen in love back in college. I'd spent over an hour preparing her favorite herb-crusted salmon, getting the sear perfect the way her grandmother used to make it. I'd even set out the good wine glasses and lit candles, because she once mentioned candlelight made everything feel romantic. Victoria walked through our front door at 7:45 with her phone pressed against her ear, laughing at something I couldn't hear. Her designer heels clicked across our hardwood floors as she barely glanced at the carefully set table. She disappeared into our bedroom, still on the call, her voice carrying through our house like background music I was no longer invited to enjoy. That's when I heard it. I know, right? That's what I said. He's sweet, but... She paused, lowering her voice. Listen, I can't talk long. Marcus is making dinner, and you know how he gets about our Tuesday thing. But yes, I'll see you Thursday. Same hotel. I carefully set down the serving spoon I'd been holding. My hands stayed surprisingly steady, even though my chest felt like it was tightening, and my throat was closing around words I couldn't form. 7 years of marriage, and I just overheard my wife planning to meet another man at a hotel. She came back 10 minutes later, phone finally silent and tucked into her back pocket. She smiled at me with that particular smile she used when she was smoothing over something awkward. Sorry about that, she said, sliding into her chair. Meredith was having a crisis. You know how she gets. I nodded, poured her wine, served her plate first like I always did. She took a bite, made an appreciative sound, and for just a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard that conversation. This is really good, she said. You've perfected it. You should cook more often. You're way better at it than I am. I smiled, though it felt like wearing a mask. You've been busy, I said, testing the waters. God, you have no idea. Work has been absolutely insane. And planning this birthday thing is taking over my entire life. Meredith and the girls have opinions about literally everything. The venue, the theme, the guest list. It's completely exhausting. Her birthday was 3 weeks away. I'd been planning a surprise for months. A weekend at that boutique resort in Hill Country. She'd bookmarked on Instagram, dinner reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. I'd even been considering finally telling her about the company Andrew and I had built. I'm sure it'll be perfect, I said. It has to be. She leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement and anxiety. Everyone's going to be there, my entire friend group, people from work, some of the Austin tech crowd. It's going to be this huge networking thing. Sounds like a lot of pressure? It is. She paused, pushing food around her plate. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. My stomach dropped at her tone. That careful neutrality, the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I knew that tone. It was how people delivered bad news while pretending it was for your own good. Okay, I said. She took another sip of wine, set down the glass, finally looked at me directly. So, the girls have been asking about you, about us, and I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't know how to say it without sounding terrible. Just say it. She exhaled slowly, like she was releasing something she'd been holding on to for way too long. We think, that maybe you're not ambitious enough for where I'm going in my career. The words landed between us like stones dropped into still water, heavy, final, rippling outward. Ambitious enough? I repeated. You know what I mean. You're comfortable in your project manager role, but I'm building something. My LinkedIn following has tripled this year. I'm getting invited to speak at conferences. People are starting to notice me in the Austin marketing scene. I looked at her across that table. This woman I'd loved for 7 years. This woman whose career I'd supported by turning down 3 job offers, including one in Seattle that would have doubled my salary. This woman who had no idea that while she was building her LinkedIn presence, I'd been building something that would change both our lives forever. And what do you think? I asked. My voice was too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. She hesitated. I think they might have a point. I need a partner who matches my energy, my vision, someone who makes an impression when they walk into a room. There it was. The thing she'd been circling around, dressed up in career ambition, so she wouldn't have to admit what this was really about. She was embarrassed by me. Had been for longer than I cared to calculate. I see, I said. Don't be like that. Her voice took on a defensive edge. I'm just being honest. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be about? You're right, I said. Honesty is important. She relaxed slightly, mistaking my agreement for acceptance. I knew you'd understand. That's one of the things I love about you. But I think I need to explore what else is out there. See if there's someone more aligned with where I'm going. The candles flickered between us. Outside, I could hear the hum of Austin traffic, a distant siren, the ordinary sounds of a city going about its ordinary evening. Inside, something was ending. Then go ahead, I said. Explore. Find someone more impressive. She blinked. What? Go ahead. You're leaving me. I'm just agreeing with you. That's not what I said. I just think we need to talk about where we're going. We just did. I stood up and began clearing the plates. I think we're done talking. You're being dramatic. Am I? I turned to really look at her, trying to find the woman I'd fallen in love with in the woman, sitting at my table wearing expensive clothes I'd helped pay for, telling me I wasn't good enough. I know about Thursday. Her face went white. What? The hotel. Same hotel you said. How long has this been going on? She stood up too, chair scraping against the floor. Marcus, How long, Victoria? 3 months? Her voice was barely a whisper. But it's not what you think. We're just... Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You want to explore what's out there? You already have been. So, let's not drag this out. The next morning, I called my lawyer while Victoria was at her yoga class. Jeff had been handling our business contracts for 2 years, though Victoria had never known the extent of what Andrew and I were building. Marriage is over, I told him when he picked up. I need to protect my assets. Was she aware of data flow analytics? He asked. No, she thinks I'm just a project manager at Dell. He was quiet for a moment. With the Series A funding we closed 8 months ago and the acquisition interest from Oracle, this could get complicated if she lawyers up. That's why I'm calling you first. Smart, let's meet today. And Marcus, document everything. Conversations, timelines, financial records, everything. That afternoon, Victoria came home from work with flowers and takeout from my favorite barbecue place. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, she said, setting the food on the counter. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe we can work through this. I watched her unpack brisket and mac and cheese, playing the role of the apologetic wife. But I'd seen behind the curtain now. This was damage control, not remorse. What changed your mind? I asked. I love you. I love our life. Maybe I was letting my career ambitions get in the way of what really matters. It was a good performance. 6 months ago, it might have worked. And the hotel meetings? She froze. That's over. It was stupid, a mistake. I'll end it. Already ended, I said quietly. I ended it this morning. What do you mean? I called your marketing director, told him one of his executives was having an affair with a client and using company resources to arrange meetings. Thought he should know. The color drained from her face. You didn't. I did. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not spending your energy pretending to be smaller than you are. That weekend, I moved out. Found a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lady Bird Lake. The kind of place I'd always wanted but had avoided because Victoria thought it was too flashy for someone in my position. Victoria kept calling, texting, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly desperate. I ignored them all. My focus was on the birthday party she thought she was planning. See, here's what Victoria didn't know. What nobody knew except Andrew and our attorney. 3 years ago, Andrew and I had started data flow analytics in his garage. We'd been building a customer behavior platform for retail companies while keeping our day jobs. It started as a side project that might amount to something or might fizzle out like most startups do. Then 2 years ago, everything changed. Target reached out wanting to license our software. The numbers they offered were staggering. We took the deal, kept the company independent, and suddenly our garage project was generating 7-figure revenue. 8 months ago, we'd closed a Series A round. $2.8 million from an Austin venture capital firm. Oracle had been sniffing around for 4 months, talking acquisition numbers that would make both Andrew and me very wealthy men. I'd wanted to tell Victoria, had actually planned to, as part of her birthday surprise, but that conversation required trust, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped trusting her with the parts of me that mattered. The venue she'd chosen for her birthday party was the Austin Music Hall downtown. I'd put the $25,000 deposit down 6 months ago, thinking we'd be celebrating together. Instead, I was about to give everyone a different kind of show. I spent the next 2 weeks in a strange state of clarity. Days felt longer, more purposeful. I was sleeping better than I had in months, eating regular meals, thinking clearly for the first time in years. It was like I'd been holding my breath for our entire marriage and could finally exhale. Andrew noticed the change immediately when I showed up at our office space in East Austin. "You look different," he said, looking up from his laptop. "Better. What's going on?" I told him everything. The dinner conversation, the affair, the divorce proceedings, my plans for the birthday party. "Jesus, man," he said when I finished. "That's brutal, but also about time." About time? Marcus, I've been watching you shrink yourself for years. Every time we had a breakthrough, every time we hit a milestone, you'd get this look like you were apologizing for succeeding. I kept waiting for you to tell her, to share what we were building. I was protecting the relationship. No, you were protecting yourself from her judgment. There's a difference. He was right, and we both knew it. "So what happens now?" Andrew asked. Now? Now we stop hiding. Oracle's offer comes in next week. The party is Saturday. After that, I'm done pretending to be less than I am. "And you're really going to do this? The presentation thing?" "I paid for the venue. I invited the guests. I have every right to speak." Andrew grinned. "This is either going to be therapeutic as hell or the most expensive therapy session in Austin history." "Probably both." That week passed in a blur of preparation. I met with Jeff twice more, finalizing paperwork that would protect my assets from any divorce proceedings. I worked with a presentation designer to create slides that would tell the story clearly, professionally, without seeming vindictive. Oracle sent their preliminary offer Tuesday morning, $28 million for full acquisition, with performance bonuses that could push it past $35 million within 2 years. Andrew and I stared at the email for a full minute before he started laughing. "You realize what this means?" he said. "That we're about to be very rich? That you're about to walk into that party as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Austin, and she has no idea." Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes I hadn't unpacked, thinking about the next evening. Part of me wondered if I was making a mistake, if this was too cruel, too public, too permanent. But then I remembered the phone conversation. He's sweet, but the dismissive tone, the casual way she'd reduced 7 years of marriage to an obstacle in her networking schedule. No, she'd made her choice months ago when she started the affair. She'd made it again Tuesday night when she told me I wasn't ambitious enough. This wasn't cruelty, this was truth. And the truth, as I'd learned, has a way of demanding to be heard. Saturday arrived clear and cold. I stood in front of my closet and chose a suit, not the cheap one from work functions, but the Tom Ford charcoal gray I'd bought 6 months ago when Oracle first expressed interest. Perfectly tailored, the kind that announced you belonged in rooms where decisions got made. White shirt, steel-colored tie, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, but something had shifted. The way I held myself. The way I looked back at my own reflection without apology. The venue was a converted warehouse with exposed brick and Edison lights. She'd always wanted to have an event there. I'd booked it 6 months ago when I thought we'd be celebrating together. I arrived early. The staff was still setting up. The venue coordinator, Lisa, saw me, her face brightening with recognition and nervousness. "Mr. Branson," she said, "we weren't sure you were still planning to attend." "I'm here," I said, "and I'd like to make an adjustment to the schedule. After dinner, I'd like to give a toast. Can we set up the AV system for a presentation?" "A presentation?" "Just a few slides, nothing elaborate." I pulled a flash drive from my pocket. "Everything's on here. Should we check with Mrs. Branson?" "It's a surprise," I said, and smiled in a way that made her stop asking questions. Guests started arriving around 7. Victoria's friend group first. The ambitious marketing executives and startup wives who'd spent years looking at me like I was furniture. Then work colleagues, people from the Austin tech scene she'd been trying to impress. Victoria arrived at 7:30 wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. Expensive, attention-demanding. She walked in, expecting applause, and slowly people noticed, started clapping and calling out birthday wishes. She didn't see me at first. I was standing at the back, nursing a whiskey and watching the performance. When her eyes finally found mine across the room, I saw shock register, saw her mouth my name, saw her stand up from her table and then sit back down. She said something to Meredith, who looked over at me with wide eyes and shook her head. I could see them having an urgent whispered conversation, but I couldn't hear the words. Didn't matter. Nothing they said could change what was about to happen. Dinner was served at 8. 3 courses, each dish from the menu I'd selected months ago when I thought we'd be celebrating 7 years of marriage and a bright future together. I sat alone at a back table, invisible to most of the crowd, just the way Victoria had always preferred it. During the main course, Victoria finally worked up the courage to approach my table. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "I paid for the venue," I said calmly. "I'm a guest at my own party." "Marcus, please don't do this. Whatever you're planning, we can talk about it privately. We had 7 years to talk privately. You chose to have important conversations with other people instead." She looked around nervously, aware that people were starting to notice our interaction. "Look, I know you're hurt. I know I made mistakes, but this isn't the way to handle it." "What way would you suggest?" I asked. "The way you handled it? Secret meetings and character assassination?" You told them I wasn't ambitious enough. You told them you needed someone more impressive. You spent 3 months in hotel rooms with another man while I paid for the life you were living. What exactly did you think the appropriate response would be?" She was crying now, mascara starting to smudge. "Please, Marcus. These people, my career, your career will survive. The question is whether your integrity will." After dessert, Lisa dimmed the lights and brought me the microphone. The room slowly went quiet as people turned to see who was speaking. "Hi, everyone," I said, and conversations died completely. For those who don't know me, my name is Marcus Branson. I was married to the birthday girl for 7 years until 2 weeks ago. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victoria had gone pale, hands gripping her table edge. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's evening. I'm here because I paid for this party and thought everyone should know the truth." The screen behind me flickered to life. First slide, the venue invoice. My name at the top, the $25,000 deposit amount, the date from 6 months ago. "I booked this venue in February, paid for everything you've enjoyed tonight. The food, the bar, the music. I did it because I loved her and wanted to give her the birthday she deserved." Next slide, a timeline of our marriage, photos from our wedding, anniversary trips, moments that told the story of 7 years together. These are from our life together. 7 years of building something I thought was real. 7 years of supporting each other's dreams, or so I believed. Victoria was openly crying now, but her friends were staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning comprehension. 2 weeks ago, she told me I wasn't ambitious enough for her career trajectory, that she needed a partner who could match her energy, her vision, someone more impressive. I clicked to the final slide. The Data Flow Analytics logo, beneath it our recent press coverage from Austin Business Journal, our Series A announcement, and a redacted version of Oracle's acquisition offer. I'm co-founder and CEO of Data Flow Analytics. We're a data platform company currently valued at $15 million. We closed Series A funding 8 months ago and just received an acquisition offer from Oracle for $28 million. The silence was deafening. You could hear the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic, nothing else. I never told her this because I wanted to build something real before announcing it. I wanted to be sure it wasn't just luck or timing. And I was planning to tell her tonight, actually, as part of a birthday surprise that included a question I'll never get to ask. I pulled out a ring box, held it up so everyone could see. But 2 weeks ago, she told me I wasn't enough. So instead of a proposal, you get a presentation. Instead of celebrating our future, you get the truth about our past. I set down the microphone and walked toward the exit. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices rising, chairs scraping, someone crying. But I didn't look back. Meredith caught me in the parking lot, breathless from running in heels. "Wait," she called out. "Please, just wait." I stopped next to my car, but didn't turn around immediately. "What?" I asked when she reached me. "I'm sorry for all of it, for not knowing, for not seeing." Her voice was shaking. "For those conversations where we said things about ambition and success. We had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked. You made assumptions based on what Victoria told you, and Victoria made assumptions based on what she wanted to believe. She told us she was paying for everything, the apartment, the trips, the lifestyle. She made it sound like you were dependent on her success. I finally turned to look at her. And you believed her because it fit the narrative you all wanted, that she was the successful one carrying dead weight. Meredith wiped her eyes. What happens now? Now Victoria faces the consequences of her choices, and you all learned something about making judgments without information. I got in my car and drove away, leaving the party, the venue, the life I'd built with someone who'd never really seen me. The story went viral within hours. Someone had live-streamed the toast on Instagram. By Monday morning, I had interview requests from 3 podcasts, a feature offer from Austin Business Journal, and 67 LinkedIn connection requests. Victoria tried calling from different numbers. I never answered. Her marketing firm let her go quietly the following week. Apparently, the client she'd been meeting at hotels was a major account, and mixing business with pleasure had violated company policy in a spectacular way. Oracle made their offer official 2 weeks later. $28 million for full acquisition, with performance milestones that could push it past $35 million within 2 years. Andrew and I took it. The Austin Business Journal ran a feature story the following month. The Invisible CEO, How Marcus Branson Built a 28-milers Company in Stealth Mode. It included quotes from Oracle's acquisition team about our unprecedented discretion and focus on building rather than promoting. I gave my first keynote at South by Southwest that March. The topic was Building in Secret, Why Stealth Mode, Success Beats Social Media Validation. 2,000 people in the audience, and it felt like the most honest conversation I'd ever had. Afterward, a woman approached me, intelligent eyes, genuine smile, founder of her own sustainable fashion startup. That was brave, she said, what you did at that party, standing in your truth even when it was uncomfortable. It was necessary, I said. You can't build something real while pretending to be less than you are. Her name was Isabella, and 6 months later, she became the first person I'd met who was more interested in discussing market analysis than social media metrics. The first person who asked about my company's growth strategy before asking about my LinkedIn following. Victoria sent one final email 8 months after the party. She'd moved to Denver, was starting over in a smaller marketing role, had learned important lessons about judgment and authenticity. She hoped I was happy and successful. I deleted it without responding because the truth is I was both. Not because I'd proven her wrong, but because I'd finally stopped needing her validation to feel valuable. The divorce was finalized in November. No contest, clean separation. The house sold quickly. Apparently, having a successful entrepreneur as a previous owner added to the property value. Victoria got half the proceeds from our shared assets, which was fair. She didn't get half of Dataflow Analytics, which was justice. Andrew and I used the Oracle money to start an Austin-based venture fund focused on stealth mode startups, companies building real value without the performance art of Silicon Valley publicity culture. Our first investment was Isabella's fashion platform. I'm writing this from my home office in the hills west of Austin. Floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the lake, the kind of space I'd always wanted but had avoided because someone else thought it didn't fit my position. The walls are covered with whiteboards showing growth projections for our portfolio companies, acquisition targets, market analyses that would have impressed Victoria if she'd ever bothered to ask what I was working on. Yesterday, I got an invitation to speak at Harvard Business School about authentic entrepreneurship in the age of social media. Next month, I'm keynoting a conference in Singapore about data analytics. The month after that, a panel discussion at Stanford about building sustainable tech companies. These opportunities didn't come because I finally started promoting myself. They came because the work spoke for itself, and when the work speaks, people listen. Sometimes I think about that Tuesday evening when everything changed. The dinner I'd spent an hour preparing, the candles, the careful way I'd arranged everything to create a romantic atmosphere for someone who was already planning to meet another man 2 days later. I think about the 7 years I spent making myself smaller, quieter, less threatening to someone else's insecurity. The job offers I turned down, the celebrations I muted, the success I hid because I thought love meant not outshining your partner. But mostly, I think about the moment I set down that microphone and walked away. The moment I chose truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance. The moment I decided that being seen clearly was worth the risk of being rejected completely. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever made yourself small for someone else's comfort, remember this. The truth will always find a way to the surface. And when it does, the only question is whether you'll have the courage to stand in it. The Oracle acquisition closed in December. The final number, with all performance bonuses included, was $36.2 million. Andrew and I celebrated quietly at a steakhouse downtown, talking about the companies we wanted to fund, the entrepreneurs we wanted to support, the ecosystem we wanted to build. Victoria never asked for more money, never challenged the divorce settlement, never questioned why I'd hidden the company from her. I think in the end, she understood that some revelations are consequences, not conversations. Choose truth. Choose yourself. The world will adjust. When they underestimated me, that was their last mistake. But when I finally stopped underestimating myself, that was my first right choice.